The blackout does not send a warning. It erases the city in a single second, and every light dies at once. Elevators stop mid-shaft, suspended between floors, turning vertical living into sudden isolation. Data centers instantly switch to backup power, and the silent countdown toward shutdown begins. Cell towers shift to battery reserves built for short-term disruption, not extended crisis. Municipal water pumps fall silent, and gravity alone cannot sustain upper floors.
Refrigeration systems fail, and food begins its invisible microbial countdown. Traffic control loses synchronization, and intersections devolve into blinking warnings. The threat is not darkness itself, but a synchronized machine losing coordination. The grid depends on a strict frequency that must remain stable at all times. When supply and demand fall out of balance, automatic protection systems disconnect entire sections to prevent permanent damage. Within milliseconds, protective relays act faster than human reaction, isolating instability before operators can intervene. What appears to be sudden collapse is often the grid, defending itself from catastrophic turbine damage. Backup generators in hospitals activate instantly, but fuel supply determines how long resilience truly lasts. Battery reserves in communication. Networks begin, depleting the moment grid power disappears. Water distribution systems depend entirely on electrically powered booster pumps. Without pump pressure, upper floors lose water access first. Wastewater lift stations stall when electric motors stop operating. In high-density cities, vertical isolation becomes a physical reality within hours. Indoor temperatures begin drifting toward outside. Conditions once HVAC systems shut down. Heat stress risk rises rapidly inside sealed buildings without ventilation. In cold climates, indoor temperatures fall steadily once heating systems lose power. Gas furnaces fail too because ignition and blowers depend on electricity. Pipes begin approaching. Freezing point when interior temperatures drop below safety margins. Food spoilage accelerates according to bacterial growth curves once refrigeration stops. Hospitals reduce non-critical operations to conserve generator fuel. Data centers prioritize critical loads to extend uptime under backup power. Fuel stations cannot operate pumps without electricity, even with full underground tanks. Digital payment systems fail when network authorization disappears. Banking networks rely on uninterrupted data routing to function. Supply chains strain as warehouses lose automated coordination. Just-in-time inventory systems leave little room for prolonged disruption. Panic buying accelerates depletion faster than restoration can begin. Cellular networks become overloaded as millions attempt simultaneous contact. Network congestion is not failure of equipment, but limits of signal capacity. Water contamination risk rises when pressure loss allows intrusion into pipes. Boil advisories follow restoration when microbial uncertainty cannot be ruled out. Grid restoration requires black start capability from specific power plants. Only select generators can energize without external grid support. Re-energizing transmission lines must be staged to prevent overload surges. Load must be reintroduced slowly to avoid another frequency collapse. Restoration does not begin with flipping a switch. It begins with small, isolated generation sources carefully energizing critical substations. Engineers must verify voltage stability before expanding outward. Every reconnection is calculated to prevent another collapse. Frequency stability must be confirmed before additional load is introduced. A sudden spike in demand can destabilize a fragile recovering grid. Operators monitor data in real time, adjusting supply minute by minute. Precision replaces speed during this stage. Voltage fluctuations during restoration can damage sensitive equipment if unmanaged. Reactive power must be balanced across transmission corridors. Capacitor banks and transformers are adjusted carefully. Restoration is controlled science, not improvisation. Urban water systems cannot fully resume until power supply stabilizes. Pump motors require consistent voltage to avoid overheating. Pressure must rebuild gradually across the network. Sudden surges risk ruptures in aging infrastructure. Inside high-rise buildings, residents begin realizing gravity cannot replace mechanical pressure. Upper floors remain dry even if lower zones recover first. Water storage tanks deplete quickly under shared demand. Distribution imbalance becomes visible within hours. Indoor temperatures continue drifting toward ambient conditions. Without ventilation, heat accumulates in sealed spaces. Thermal mass slows change slightly, but cannot prevent equilibrium. The human body becomes the primary cooling system. In winter conditions, heat loss progresses through walls, windows, and structural gaps. Insulation delays but cannot stop thermal decline. Prolonged cold transforms discomfort into medical risk. Energy absence becomes physiological stress. Fuel logistics begin tightening as generator supplies diminish. Diesel delivery depends on functional transportation networks. Without electricity at terminals, pumping and distribution slow dramatically. Backup systems rely on supply chains that may also be compromised. Communication networks contract as battery reserves expire at tower sites. Signal coverage becomes fragmented rather than universal. Information spreads unevenly across regions. Uncertainty intensifies faster than infrastructure recovers. Behavioral response becomes a multiplier of infrastructure stress. Panic increases resource consumption beyond planned capacity. Rumors travel faster than verified updates. Stability depends as much on psychology as on engineering. When refrigeration remains offline, food safety becomes a race against microbial growth. Bacteria multiply exponentially in the temperature danger zone. What appears safe may already be compromised. Knowledge of time and temperature thresholds determines whether illness follows outage. Water storage becomes the most immediate determinant of survival stability. The human body can endure hunger longer than dehydration. Heat accelerates fluid loss beyond perception. Secure access to potable water defines resilience in the first 48 hours. Portable power systems act as micro-scale lifelines when prioritized correctly. Charging communication devices consumes minimal energy compared to refrigeration. Load management at the household level mirrors grid-level strategy. Survival favors disciplined allocation over convenience. Ventilation using natural airflow reduces heat stress without consuming power. Cross breezes exploit pressure differentials between windows. Even minimal airflow aids evaporative cooling. Understanding physics reduces physiological strain. In cold environments, insulating interior spaces conserves remaining heat. Closing unused rooms reduces thermal loss. Layered clothing becomes a primary defense mechanism. Heat retention depends on minimizing exposure, not generating new energy. Communication redundancy prevents isolation from becoming panic. Battery-powered radios operate independent of cellular networks. Information continuity stabilizes perception of risk. Silence increases anxiety faster than confirmed updates. Fuel accessibility becomes more important than stored quantity. Generators without refill capability represent temporary solutions. Transportation networks must remain partially functional for sustained operation. Energy without distribution equals inaccessibility. Urban density magnifies every infrastructure limitation. Thousands depend on shared vertical systems for water and mobility. Stairwells replace elevators as primary transport. Physical endurance becomes part of survival planning. Medical devices dependent on electricity create critical vulnerability windows. Backup batteries provide hours, not days. Patients reliant on powered equipment must transition quickly to alternative locations if outages persist. Planning precedes safety. As restoration teams coordinate black start sequences, the public rarely sees the precision underway. Synchronizing isolated grid islands requires stable communication channels. Transmission corridors must be tested before energizing load. Recovery is incremental, not immediate. When parts of the grid come back online, demand often surges instantly. Households switch everything on at once without realizing the system is still fragile. This sudden load spike can drag frequency down again. Recovery requires disciplined consumption during the first hours of restoration. Transformer equipment must cool before handling full operational capacity. Overheating during unstable phases can shorten lifespan dramatically. Thermal monitoring is continuous during restart procedures. Infrastructure durability depends on patience more than speed. Substations are inspected for hidden damage before load is restored. A single compromised insulator can trigger another trip event. Visual confirmation supplements digital diagnostics. Physical infrastructure still governs digital systems. Water treatment facilities require stable voltage. Before chemical dosing systems resume, chlorination levels must be recalibrated after interruption. Contamination risk increases during unstable restart. Public health depends on controlled sequencing. Banking systems cannot fully recover without synchronized data validation across servers. Backup power preserves data integrity, but network stability ensures transaction accuracy. Restoration of commerce depends on digital trust. Financial continuity mirrors electrical continuity. Traffic systems must be manually verified before returning to automated cycles. Signal timing coordination prevents intersection collisions. Even minor misalignment creates cascading congestion. Urban movement depends on synchronized timing algorithms. Cold storage warehouses race against time once refrigeration resumes. Spoilage assessments must be conducted before redistributing goods. Temperature logs determine whether products remain safe. Economic loss accelerates if verification fails. Medical facilities prioritize critical care systems before restoring non-essential lighting. Load segmentation is deliberate and strategic. Each kilowatt is accounted for during unstable recovery windows. Hospital resilience depends on hierarchical power allocation. Communication infrastructure reactivates, region by region as tower batteries recharge. Coverage returns unevenly across metropolitan zones. Signal stability takes time to normalize. The perception of chaos declines as connectivity improves. The first stable night after restoration reveals the scale of systemic dependency. Refrigeration hums again, water pressure normalizes. Streetlights glow with renewed synchronization. Yet the experience exposes how fragile uninterrupted energy truly is. In the aftermath, infrastructure audits begin immediately. Engineers analyze frequency deviations, relay timing, and protective trips. Every millisecond of data is reviewed for weakness. Grid stability depends on learning faster than the next disturbance arrives. Load forecasting models are recalibrated using real outage behavior. Consumption patterns during collapse reveal vulnerabilities in demand assumptions. Data science becomes a defensive tool. Predictive modeling strengthens future resilience. Urban planners reassess vertical dependency on electric pump systems. Redundancy may exist, but independence is rare. Buildings are engineered for efficiency, not autonomy. Structural design rarely anticipates prolonged grid absence. Emergency managers review hydration incidents, hospital admissions, and supply shortages. Health data exposes where stress surfaced first. The pattern is consistent across dense populations. Water scarcity always rises faster than food scarcity. Behavioral scientists evaluate public response under communication uncertainty. Panic curves correlate with information gaps. Transparent messaging reduces destabilizing reactions. Psychological stability supports physical stability. Electrical inertia becomes central to modernization discussions. As rotating mass declines in modern grids, synthetic stabilization systems gain urgency. Engineering evolves toward faster response algorithms. Complexity grows as protection improves. Black start facilities are evaluated for redundancy and geographic distribution. One restart source is vulnerability. Multiple sources are resilience. Regional balance determines restart speed. Infrastructure design adapts after failure. Water treatment plants examine pressure loss duration and contamination risk windows. Chemical feed resilience becomes central concern. Pump reliability is reanalyzed under stress. Public health protection depends on mechanical reliability. Hospital systems assess generator fuel autonomy and ventilation reliability. Backup duration is measured against real outage length. Medical continuity planning adjusts based on evidence. Survival depends on realistic timelines, not optimistic assumptions. For individuals, the lesson is unmistakable. Grid stability is engineered, not guaranteed. Preparation bridges the gap between interruption and restoration. Understanding energy dependency transforms fear into calculated readiness. Energy security begins at the smallest scale, the individual household. The same principles that stabilize continental grids apply in miniature. Supply must match demand, storage must buffer fluctuation, and load must be prioritized. Preparedness is applied systems engineering, not reaction. Water redundancy must precede crisis, not follow it. Stored potable water offsets pressure collapse in the first critical hours. Filtration systems add a secondary layer of defense. Hydration stability reduces every other physiological risk. Food planning must account for refrigeration failure. Shelf-stable options extend resilience beyond generator runtime. Caloric continuity supports cognitive clarity under stress. Nutrition becomes part of infrastructure independence. Portable lighting extends operational hours without draining critical batteries. LED efficiency transforms minimal stored energy into sustained illumination. Darkness magnifies uncertainty. Light reduces psychological strain. Energy allocation must reflect necessity, not comfort. Communication resilience requires parallel pathways. Radios independent of cellular networks preserve information continuity. Verified updates counteract rumor-driven panic. Signal redundancy stabilizes perception during infrastructure silence. Temperature management relies on physics rather than electricity alone. Insulation, airflow control, and layered clothing reduce thermal stress. Human survival adapts when environmental exchange is managed intelligently. Engineering principles apply inside every room. Fuel strategy must consider both storage and access. Without distribution capability, reserves remain unusable. Planning includes mobility, not just quantity. Energy resilience is defined by accessibility. Medical readiness bridges outages that exceed battery life. Backup power for devices is temporary, not permanent. Rapid relocation planning may be life-preserving. Electricity is often invisible until it disappears. Urban mobility shifts from automation to physical movement when elevators and transit stop. Stairwells become arteries of vertical cities. Physical endurance becomes logistical strategy. Infrastructure absence alters human behavior instantly. The final lesson of a blackout is not fear, but clarity. Continuous energy flow sustains modern order. When flow halts, fragility becomes visible. Preparedness converts that fragility into survivable interruption. After restoration, complacency returns faster than infrastructure memory fades. Lights switch on, signals synchronize, and daily routines resume. Yet the grid that failed once remains governed by the same physical laws. Stability is always maintained, never assumed. Energy demand continues rising as cities grow denser and systems become more automated. Electrification expands into transportation, heating, and industry. Each added dependency increases synchronization requirements. Complexity deepens interconnection. Renewable integration reshapes the architecture of grid stability. Inverter-based generation responds differently than traditional rotating mass. Synthetic inertia compensates for declining mechanical inertia. The grid evolves, but physics remains unchanged. Cyber and digital control layers increase efficiency but introduce new coordination pathways. Automation accelerates response time beyond human reflex. Algorithms now guard stability. Control theory governs survival of megacities. Extreme weather patterns amplify stress on generation and transmission corridors. Heat waves spike demand as generation efficiency declines. Cold snaps increase load just as fuel logistics strain. Compound events define modern risk. Urban resilience planning now emphasizes microgrids and decentralized energy clusters. Localized generation reduces dependency on distant transmission paths. Smaller grids can isolate without collapsing entirely. Compartmentalization increases survivability. Battery storage technology extends duration between disturbance and collapse. Energy buffering reduces immediate shock. However, storage is finite and must be managed. Engineering innovation stretches time, not infinity. Public awareness remains the most underutilized resilience tool. Understanding system dependency transforms reaction into preparation. Calm behavior reduces resource strain. Knowledge stabilizes communities. Preparedness bridges the fragile window between loss and restoration. It converts uncertainty into measured response. Infrastructure will falter again somewhere, sometime. Scientific literacy determines who endures comfortably and who struggles unnecessarily. The final message before any blackout is simple and scientific. Continuous energy flow sustains modern civilization, and interruption reveals dependency. Systems fail in phases, and restoration demands precision. Preparation before the event is the only variable you control.